Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo says that he's no bias or prejudice against any person. He was responding to questions posed to him on his work at the State Capture Commission. Zondo is the fourth candidate to be interviewed for the head of the judiciary position. Commissioners revealed some serious objections were raised against his nomination for the position. The veteran jurist told them that he was not biased towards the current administration. Zondo has faced criticism for his handling of the State Capture Commission, which was established by former President Jacob Zuma. The acting Chief Justice says that these allegations are perceptions and are void of facts.
In the work of the Commission, the President gave evidence, and like every witness, his evidence will have to be weighed up, assessed. I haven't gone to that, to dealing with most of his evidence, and I will have to make findings. But as I said earlier on, with this job, you have got to do the job, make the findings you make, accept that you may make enemies, but also accept that you may make findings against anybody, including the President. So if there is enough evidence that justifies a finding against the President, that finding will be made. But no finding will be made against the President if there is no evidence that justifies it. Just as with regard to former President Zuma, where I've made any finding against him, I've done so because there is evidence. But where there's no evidence, I will not make any finding against President Zuma when there is no evidence. I will not make any finding against anybody when there's no evidence. But I will make a finding against anybody if the evidence justifies it. So, and if I must suffer any consequences for that, it's fine.
Well, that's the acting Chief Justice a little bit earlier today as he was facing questions being interviewed for the top post at the Constitutional Court. Now, joining us now via Zoom for more is Theo Mapheto, who's the Chairperson of the Black Lawyers Association and also attorney at Mapheto Attorneys. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, Peter. Thanks for having me.
So today was the fourth and final installment of this most watched briefing, interview sessions. What did you make of today?
Well, today, like the 2 days, is it two? The 2 days? 3 days. Is a demonstration of a working democracy. You must understand that the JSC plays a very important role in our democracy. No judge can be appointed without that process. So it's a very important vindication of the principle of democracy when you see that the appointment of judges is a transparent and public process. So today was very, very important in that regard.
All right. So over the 4 days, we'll talk about Justice Zondo just now, but over the 4 days, do you think that enough questions, the right questions were put before the candidates to give us, the public, an idea of the people that were facing us?
Well, to sit for an interview for virtually the whole day is no child's play. The questions, as you know, came from different quarters. The JSE is made up of different stakeholders. It's made up of people who are from the academic circles. It's made up of parties in the National Assembly, the minister, and the judiciary. So you'd expect that the questions would be as diverse as the composition of the JSE. I, sitting where I am sitting, found the questions very, very engaging. You must realize, Peter, that a Chief Justice is somebody who should be able to withstand any kind of pressure. The questions that came from the members of the JSC seek to demonstrate that to the public.
All right, so let's talk about the acting Chief Justice and the questions that he faced. And no doubt state capture would come up. Before we get into the detail of those questions, do you think that looking at how he handled state capture has any bearing on his being Chief Justice?
That's inevitable. In fact, I was just talking to a colleague in the morning and saying that the state capture report would constitute the majority of the questions that the Chief Justice faced, and you could see from the members of the JSC that they were almost obsessed with the state capture report and the way that the Chief Justice handled the whole process. The state capture, as you know, is a phenomenon that captured the imagination of this country for quite a long time. The Commission came at a very important time when the country came to a decision to rid itself of state capture. So no doubt the Chief Justice the acting Chief Justice, that is, had to face those tough questions coming from the state capture process.
All right, and maybe if I ask the question in a different way, in finding out how he handled the state capture, does that tell us whether he'd be a good constitutional Chief Justice or not?
Yes. You would remember that in some quarters, there's complaints that he exhibited some signs of bias towards the incumbent president. So I have no doubt that in their own deliberations, the JSE would look into a question of bias, a question of suitability. Because as you know, a judge has to be impartial, has to be independent. So any indications that a judge is beholden to some interests other than the interest of justice is a worrying factor. And I have no doubt that those members of the JSE who raised the issue of bias and partiality would motivate that he is not appointed as the Chief Justice of this country.
All right. So did he get through the day okay?
To our mind, he has acquitted himself quite superbly. He's done very well, especially given the kind of pressure that he was bound to face. But he was no exception. If you think about it, all the judges from Monday faced quite a barrage of questions, and I wouldn't want to be in their shoes.
All right, so I'm just now, when we look back at the four candidates, they're all competent judges and different experiences, but I don't think competence is going to be an issue to separate them from the four. What do you think might have come out from this that might set one apart from the other? What kind of qualities were coming through, or issues that need to be dealt with that were coming through that started to separate them? You're
right on the money. I mean, competence does not even come into play, because it's an open secret that the judges who interviewed this week are competent. But I think the other factors that would obviously come into the president's mind when he makes the appointment One immediate factor that comes to mind is the relative youth of the candidates. I was just looking at the ages of all the candidates, and it seems to me that Justice Maya, or President Maya, to be correct, is the youngest of the judges who interviewed. That would obviously be one of the questions, one of the factors that the president looks at, because you want a Chief Justice who would give sufficient time to serving as a Chief Justice. Justice Zondo, for instance, if my computation is right, has 2 years to go until he retires. So I would imagine that the president would look into such factors.
All right, so some of the issues that came up over the 4 days, things like transformation, gender, equality. Do you think that some of these judges equip themselves well in terms of talking about how they can deal with these issues? Do you feel as if one of these get appointed, that somehow their Chief Justiceship is going to make a change, or do you think we're just going to go through this another Chief Justice and not much will change in the courts below them?
Well, I hope not. Being a Chief Justice does not only require one to be an excellent jurist. I mean, that's an obvious fact. But it also requires somebody who has a firm grasp of administration. You want a Chief Justice who would appreciate that the first port of call when somebody accesses justice is in a magistrate court in some godforsaken village. You want a Chief Justice who would ensure that the court system functions effectively. So it would seem to me that in the interviews, Judge President Mlambo touched on that point very extensively. The point about administration, the point about the proper functioning of the court system, but of course the issue of transformation should be uppermost in the minds of practitioners and members of the public. You want a judiciary that reflects in broad terms the composition, the gender and racial composition of this country. And you want a Chief Justice who would ensure that ideal of the Constitution comes into being.
All right. I don't know if I can ask you this because you're an officer of the court and it may be difficult for you to answer, but was there one person that if you had to vote today that you would choose as the next Chief Justice?
You're asking me to be in the shoes of the president.
Yes.
I am fortunate that I'm not the president of this country. It's going to be a difficult one. Yeah. It's a difficult one to call. It's safe to say, Peter, that we as the Black Lawyers Association hold the view that the judges who interviewed this week acquitted themselves well. It's a demonstration that if given a chance, any person will rise to the occasion. And we view that as an affirmation of the transformation efforts that we have been advocating for.
You see, this is why you're such a good attorney. You're very clever with your words and your answers. Thank you so much, Theo. It's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Good evening.
All right, that's Theo Mapheto, who's an attorney, didn't want to give anything away, representing the Black Lawyers Association as well, saying that any of those judges actually would equip themselves very well if they're given the chance. Well, you've heard them over the past 4 days, and now it's sitting with the president to decide who will be the next Chief Justice.